This conference will now be recorded.
And you should see my screen that shows the board members in today's meeting. And let me get this to work for us here. So because we're operating under a special decree by the governor still, the board meetings, people can still make public comments. We had posted this on the website and we've put it out there, and at the discretion of the board president, if somebody wants to add in additional information or something, they can by just letting Shelley know in the form of an email. She's in the adjacent room, maintaining distance at her computer, maintaining the minutes. I'm in my office at my desk, and I have the steering wheel. So we do ask, if you're not speaking or until you're asked to speak, keep your microphones muted. So many of you noticed that there's just 4 directors in the boardroom. We have a 5th, that's David Cole, and David is on the call and in full compliance and able to participate in the decisions as well. And then Leland will do a roll call of all at the beginning of the actual meeting after the workshop, unless he chooses to do that now. Shelley, you should be able to see, hopefully, if somebody has not put their name at their spot. Corey is manning the front desk, and it says my name there on that monitor. And that's if somebody from the general public comes in. We have a station there for them to speak. We don't let them pass the front table, but they can also look through the window behind Scott into the boardroom. Again, we're adhering to the necessary social distancing. So the call, everybody's on. You see that same announcement. So the first workshop item, I think that's what you brought up, was it not, Leland? Me to give an update. So Gary and I represent the district. I as the voting member, and the joint planning, Gary is the alternate. We had our first GMA 8 meeting virtual last month on May the 15th. Sandra, are you trying to?
Are you going to call the meeting to order?
He did earlier and turned it to me.
All right.
He did at 1:31. So the first agenda item, workshop item, is just to bring you up to date. These are the 2 documents we showed you last meeting. One was the technical memorandum that Mike Keister prepared for us to evaluate groundwater pumping, so that we could actually apply that into the discussions in joint planning, in all fairness and support of the people's needs and where the water is actually being pumped. So the information over there on the left that was provided to you last month was actually the talking points that I used in support of that. So what's happened? So on the 15th, James Beach with WSP is the consultant. He discussed the mags from the first round of planning that will be used in the 2027 state water plan. He then discussed Run 11, and Run 11 begins in 2010 and projects out to 2080. The current plan that we're under projected from 2000 out to 2070, I believe. Again, as you go through the data and all that information, is essentially just bringing all the members up to date on what his tasks he's done related to Run 11. But remember, we offered information how we wanted to see vertical redistribution and the layers within our aquifer system, the Trinity, and so it did some of the other districts. So Upper Trinity, based on Run 10, which is the current acre feet per year that were from the previous joint planning, and they've made some adjustments based on reality pumping and what they now know about the aquifer systems. And so you can see, I'm just showing you this, how sophisticated the districts are becoming as they work through this realignment and look at the different layers. Upper Trinity GCD, it's very apparent that they represent Wise, Parker, Montague, and Hood counties, and they're doing a superb job, and they actually presented the reasons why they wanted to change theirs. Southern Trinity, which I'm just always a big fan of Scooter and his board of directors. They started out as a district that didn't have a lot of data, and with the help of Dr. Yelderman, I see he's on the call. In Run 10 previously, they just looked at what the state thought or what others thought that the full pumping was in their district at 15,937 per year. And so that's what the baseline pumping was, and the intention to not let it ever exceed that. But now they offered adjustments based on the reality of their dependence on the Austin, the lower Trinity, and so they made adjustments to that, and showing what they're dependent, they've actually reduced their dependence on groundwater, or are getting much more accurate. But this is the amount of pumping that was in for the baseline years 2010 through 2019, and then it projected out for a maximum of 15,937, which was their maximum pumping or their MAG in the previous DFC. Very intuitive, and for a part-time GM, they don't have a full-time staff, and I just simply say it's like having a part-time preacher. There's no such thing. You give them part-time pay and they work full-time, and I really believe that's the case in Scooter Radcliffe, and his support from Baylor is immense. So kudos to you, Dr. Joe, for what you do for Southern Trinity. Prairie Lands GCD made some across-the-board adjustments for theirs based on their new understanding and discernment. A lot of it's just moving from one layer of the aquifer to another and making those adjustments. Clearwater did ours, as I presented to you in workshop, and these are where we know that we did some rounding. Obviously, 1097 to 1100 was more of a rounding, but we also made some adjustments with the ability to go put more dependence on the Austin based on some of our newer information. And we also removed quite a bit of the pumping that was in the previous run, because we know that it doesn't exceed that 275, and we know that is not a layer of the aquifer we depend on. Williamson County pumping, based on our research and research by Central Texas GCD, as well as the help of WSP, we looked at the reality of pumping in there, and we looked at what the previous MAGs were, and so we made adjustments and made that in a public setting should there have been representatives from those two counties, Williams and Travis. Unfortunately, they don't have a voting seat at the table, but yet if they had been there, we would have offered them this data and the reasons we've done this to afford them or incentivize their dependence in the eastern side of their county on the Austin, and opposed to being so dependent on the Hensel. But without a GCD, we feel like Run 11 reflects what's probably there. The same with Travis County pumping. You can see they have a greater dependence on the Austin than even, and they actually have some plans in the state water plan, and this will afford them the ability to tap into SWIFT funds, because we've adjusted the Austin, which is where we want them to pump, and still be able to access SWIFT funds, because there will be available MAG based on this adjustment. Central Texas GCD, he actually talked about his and the same reasons for their adjustments that we participated with them in our early discussion. And obviously we wanted to make sure they knew what we were doing, and they offered this to us ahead of time. And then Mitchell Sodick laid it out on behalf of his directors that day. The last thing that was a key part of the joint planning process as we move toward our new DFCs and the public hearings and the things that have to occur in late 2020 all the way through May of 2021 is when we have to have the new DFCs in place. Just so it shows those 9 factors. Those of you on the board before know explicitly that this is in the law. These are the factors that jointly all the districts have to work together to look at. So we've WSP and Blanton and Associates laid out the environmental impacts, the subsidence impacts, and the hydrogeologic conditions back in November. There was concurrence from the members that was sufficient, and it was very similar to what was in the previous. And in February, before we went to stay in place orders, we were able to meet, and they addressed those 3 criteria of the 9 factors: aquifer uses and conditions, supply needs, and management strategies, and actually talked about and documented, even though many of the counties are in GCDs, so there's modified right to capture, but yet we talked about the number of counties that still have full right to capture in our GMA, and it's not just Williamson and Travis County, but many counties to the north, many counties to the northeast, starting with even Falls County doesn't have a district, and they actually reach to it. Last but not least, the 3 criteria were discussed down here, and some of the additional factors are going to be presented at the next meeting, which I believe is August 7th. Gary, to put that on your calendar, I got that notice from the administrative team, and hopefully they'll meet in person, but also offer a virtual option for those who are sensitive or at high risk to the virus. Bottom line is that's where we're at on GMA 8. There's no decisions, no public hearings yet to be held by our district. Any questions?
Any board member got a question?
No.
No.
Okay.
And being that, go ahead, David.
But August the 7th is correct.
Yes, August the 7th. And I'll double check that too. That could change. There's always a possibility, but we'll always do the full announcement as if it's a regular board meeting, and it has to be posted in all counties, including the counties where there's not a district, I believe. So I'd like to bring you up to date on this next item. Is that okay now, Leland?
Sure. Go ahead. Item number 2, which is receive an update on the critical habitat of salamander.
So, we've been so focused in the coalition. We've talked about this last time, and always use this base map right here just to illustrate the purple map that reaches the furthest is actually what's considered initially by the Fish and Wildlife Service that the geology underneath. So that's the subsurface maps, and then the surface maps, the surface proposed habitat are the gray circles. We have met with the coalition partners. Leland's attended, and so has Gary, and we've contracted with Natural Resource Solutions to help articulate and look at all of the science, and they've been meeting with Dr. Yelverman, with USGS personnel multiple times, with Pete multiple times, who works for Fish, in just making sure we understand the data, and then we have able to put shape files together. One is to show even these original proposed locations are not accurate. The one on Robertson Ranch is significantly far from, and because the spring run is right here. So we know that, well, we're hoping that they realized some of this before they sent this proposed maps up the pike. We understand we were a little late at the table, and so we weren't able to, we're building maps and suggested, and then they're building scientifically defensible maps and reasons for it so that it's not arbitrary. And there is documents from other researchers that you can get to. These initial maps can be very arbitrary in nature, and certainly Fish strives not to do that, but they're looking for the best available science, which in our case, NRS has really hung their hat on and looked at a lot of the data, and the data that I'll talk about here just a second. So our friends to the south have salamander issues as well. They've always had them. I just want to show you where the springs in Williamson County are. This red is my laser right there. But in Bell County, we have the spring complex on Solana Ranch and then the spring complex here. Those are the only identified spring segments that have proposed habitat. And I will say the blessing is this is a full preserve in perpetuity, because I believe it was, and Jennifer's on the line, is with us from Parks and Wildlife. That actually through a Section 6 grant from the federal government to Texas Parks and Wildlife, and then they worked it through Mr. Carter's office. That property is essentially protected and is under the guidance now of the Nature Conservancy. I see Jennifer Warren, are you there? Do you want to add something that if I wasn't factual, and because I just believe that's one of the very positive things for Bell County is that Solana Ranch is protected, and it's actually out in an area where it's very buffered even from pumping from both Bell and Williamson County.
I have not heard anything unfactual from your statements.
And I'm just being very general about that. But that's why we don't focus on this, because the Nature Conservancy and Jennifer and her counterparts and Pete and some of the other biologists from Parks and Wildlife are very involved, and we actually have been and did some DNA work through Pete. So here's where our interest is. Now, I'm just going to show you a couple of things that that kind of tie to this. We always have to keep in mind that we're talking about the northern segment of the Edwards Aquifer. From the southern section, I'll show you where there's GCDs and where there's oversight and management of all endangered species up and down this corridor, up to the Colorado River. So there is GCDs that work with this. There's the Barton Springs GCD that's right in this area, and it overlays the other districts like Plum Creek, who manages the Trinity. But there's also down here in Kinney County is the Kinney County District. But the red lines that are cut are the Edwards Aquifer Authority, which when I was a county agent in this big, massive county right here, Barrett County, federal judge came in and took over during that time in the 90s, where I was there with a lot of my cohorts. He took over this segment until the state of Texas legislature put something in place to satisfy and put protections of spring flow in all these locations. So what also has happened is there is GCDs here now that are a part of this that have protections. And then there's also the new GCDs in Southwest Travis County that Senator Buckingham actually championed. I don't remember who was on the House side for that one, but that got done and that's been taken care of. But yet we have this segment right here as well, the Springs and Bell County, that there needs to be concerns for protecting spring flow, and that's there's no GCD there and there's no GCD there, even though I'll show you again where the critters are at and what that is. And so this is to show some of our staffers with Buckingham's office and with Brad Buckley's office and with Colonel Shine's office. They couldn't understand why we were talking about different salamanders in all of this. The common term a lot of people say a salamander is a salamander is a salamander. And so if we put an analogy of fruit's fruit, right? But there's oranges, there's apples, and there's pears, and they all fall in the fruit family. Now, visibly or phenotypically, like cattle, Jody, we can see the difference in the breeds or in the variety. But we also know there's genetic differences, even though they might look the same to a naked eye. And so I want to show here. So this is that very southern area of Williamson County that's actually the city of Austin and the city of Round Rock. There's springs there, and there's a salamander called the Jollyville. So I'll just call him a pear. And then we've got this. This is Williamson County, and here is the springs that are in there. Here's Georgetown and all the spring locations that are in those proposed all the way back that I talked to you about in 2012. So let's just call the one south of the river an apple back in 2012, 2013, and the apples were also on the north side. So then here's Bell County. Here's where we'll just call ours oranges. Well, our oranges are also in downtown Salado. So whether they look alike or they're not, there's always been some question and some concerns. There was some, I believe the Hillis report several years ago said they may not all be proper. There may be some additional distinctions from a genetic standpoint. And so University of Texas, and this is that supplemental information that was received, that was published in December, and it's called Devitt 2019, and I believe it's named after Thomas Devitt. And you can see Hillis is involved in that as well. And this is not a book study. There was a Section 6 grant to the university by way of US Fish and Parks and Wildlife, I guess, might be participatory in getting the money to the University of Texas, and they really looked hard and fast at the genetics. And this report came out simultaneously with these suits, whether they were in concert, who knows? The bottom line is, this is the best available science. I hang my hat on that because that's what drives decisions, is the best available science. We've been living by that credo. So this best available science shows, oh, what once was a Georgetown apple is now a Salado orange in the northern half of Williamson County. We've talked about it from the San Gabriel River. This is Lake Georgetown. These are springs that are in key areas, and even the one downtown and some of the others. They actually do, with the Williamson County Foundation, they have a preserve, I believe, at Twin Springs. So they've been managing and learning. We haven't seen their scientific work, but we know they've been working because I looked at the budget history for Williamson County's Conservation Foundation, and it was as little as, I don't know, $600,000 a year in 2017, and is up to $1.59 million annual budget to essentially manage their HCP and their scientific studies for their salamanders. Now, they have a HCP that looks at a lot of other endangered species. This is no indictment of them. It just means they're watching it, doing diligence as we have. But so back in 13, remember we were saying these are pears and these are apples and these are oranges. And now the new springs are above that. So now the oranges extend all the way down here. So currently they have, and that's per the Divot report. But what they did back in 2013, which we didn't do because we didn't think we had the science, but we had the ability to address the threats in the last 5 years. So the science was really speaking to, what they did was pursued that 4D rule, which was less onerous. It's a rule by US Fish in concert at the request of the counties or the foundation or the coalition. It's not mandated, but you have that privilege. And I think that speaks to the value of a 4D rule. And then so whether it be the county or be the village in our case, a 4D rule would basically be negotiated with US Fish personnel, and then it would be applicable to things like development rules and ordinances inside a city, those kinds of things. And it may document what the district does in terms of groundwater protection and groundwater flow and where our monitor wells are and where our gauges. It may speak to those things. It basically puts protections around us. It hedges us with what we do regulatory wise and ordinance wise, that we can continue to work and not be subject to suits, as well as the private landowner. Again, I'm generalizing there. Please, I don't take that completely. But here's the last thing that you'll see a piece of this. You saw this presentation from Mike, and we haven't dropped our official gavel on these results, and we'll do so once we get our 2019 drawdown studies in the Trinity and Trinity, the different layers of the Trinity from LRE and some additional work that he's doing for us. But just to let you know, we produce from the Edwards Aquifer less than just a little bit over 2,000 acre feet a year, and our MAG says we can pump another 3,000, which we don't, because where people want to pump those high numbers, they're fearful it could negatively impact the springs. But let's just look at Travis County. The blue line right here is actually the pumping in the Edwards Aquifer, and the blue lines down here are the ones that represent the number of wells. So from 2010 on in Travis County, they've been increasing their wells. But we look at the total wells and we see that they have been continuing, and they're producing in Travis County, both by permitted, if they were to be permitted, or even exempt wells, in excess of 13,000 acre feet a year. Over here in Williamson County, our belief is, and through the science, and it's been vetted by many, we see that they're dependent on about 18,000 acre feet a year. By this blue bar that stops right there, that's just a little bit less than 18,000 acre feet in our assessment in 2018. And so from 2010 on, you can see a progressive increase in production, and it corresponds with the increase in wells. So why do I bring that to the table is what we'll be hanging our hats on is how we remove the threats collectively by the coalition. One is the village has addressed their septic issue. Many have been imploded. The new sewer system replaced the old sewer lines, and the previous old sewer system was actually decommissioned. And we've been monitoring water quality. We've had Jennifer's on the call. She's been working with Pete Diaz, whom we have a reimbursable task order with US Fish. That was for 5 years, and we've continued that relationship. The reimbursable task order was with Clearwater, but it was funded by Clearwater and the coalition, and we'll talk about that later for an action item so that I can renegotiate that with them, just to make sure it stays in place, because that's some of the things that our consultants are saying are so very positive. What else do we know at this point is, one is the judge is the lead of the coalition, and I'll let Leland, he's attended the meeting, so has Gary, but he has also briefed Congressman Carter's office on it, and why we want to go forward with working with Williamson County should they not want to go full blown with a couple of other strategies. And so again, we talked about those, but let's talk about the timeline that the coalition is working under and being guided by natural resource solutions. One is August 12th, when the deadline in the stipulated settlement by the judge in Washington, D.C. So hopefully we can get our data to them, but I feel like we're a little bit late. We lost about 7, 8, 10 days, and they may have already sent their proposed designation, but that's okay because we'll have a 60-day window somewhere in that 12 months where we can offer public comments, we can offer documents and point towards scientific evidence that we have, point toward the best available science, and get multiple people, private folks in our county, to be briefed in the near future what those facts are, and encourage them to offer comments as well. But then again, by August 21, 2021, they'll have to make that final designation. But the Williamson County group, and this is what our consultants have told us, and the judge is working through this, they have a mechanism in place. They already have an HCP. And so that habitat conservation plan is designed for the endangered bugs and beetles and those that were associated with the highway issues they had many, many years ago. So we briefed our legislative leadership in Carter's office, as well as our state representative and our state senator, that if Williamson County goes down this route, that's fine. They've already we think they possibly notified them that they're actually just going to say, you know what, salamander's salamander. Let's push them all into a separate chapter, and we'll establish these components of an HCP. And that all sounds well and good, but one is, if we go that route, then it is very expensive, very onerous, and that was one thing that the coalition covenant amongst all was always memorialized in the annual agreement every year, that if we had science that did not push this species to endangered status, then we would fall on our sword not to have an HCP. But yet the opportunity exists. There's already a 4D rule for the Georgetown salamander, but because they lost 40% of the range, that's now the Salado orange, in my analogy, that maybe we could go together on a 4D rule for the Salado salamander. And yes, if they make that other salamander endangered, then they'd only have to focus on those springs. I will tell you, our judge is such a diplomat, and he really gets all this. We're just waiting to see his next meeting with the leadership of Williamson County. Mind you, they have a lot of discernment because obviously they've been spending a lot of money according to the budget trends in that particular department. The 4D rule, though, is what if we can't, we want to have a 4D rule and it protect us, because we don't want to participate in a HCP down there, but it's going to take an additional $80,000 to $90,000 for us to utilize a consultant to navigate a 4D rule on our behalf with the federal component, and that could possibly start in August 15th as well. But again, it's premature until we see the maps, see the scientific defensible positions that might be afforded us before we take those to the leadership of U.S. Fish and pursue a final 4D rule. So with that said, Leland, I know I've talked a lot, but there's a lot of moving pieces in this. And again, the coalition had agreed to pay $40,000 to navigate these first step, but the second step would be to pursue the 4D rule and let our own stakeholders drive that conversation. That means the developers and landowners out in southwest part of the county that have land for future development. A 4D rule can be good if you have engaged people to buy into it that will be impacted by it. And so that process has not yet been started. But the next step that will happen is, though, after Judge has met with Williamson County to determine what their path forward is, and then come back to the coalition, we're going to invite all the people of Salado that are in that map area, as well as could potentially be impacted to the southwest. Again, under a 4D rule and under a critical habitat, we're only talking about the actual spring location and the subsurface surface necessary protections. And they could be substantially smaller than some of the preliminary things I've seen. What up with that?
Feedback somewhere.
Somebody's got a phone that's giving us a little bit of trouble. Okay. All right. So, anybody from the board want to make some comments on this? I mean, it's just a status update. No, it's a lot more complicated, but you'll be kept abreast next month, probably with more specificity.
Yeah, this is Gary Young, and the comment is Dirk mentioned that I've been in a lot of these virtual meetings concerning the salamander and et cetera. And Dirk made a comment that maybe we're 7 or 8 days behind, but one of the meetings was to bring up the aldermans in Salado, get them totally up to steam on that and all the work that Dirk has done and the judge has done. Judge commented the fact he said, I'm a neophyte. I'm learning a lot of back history on this. The amount of hours that have been spent by all these people putting this together in the NRS and et cetera is just incredible amount of time and effort and hours. So I say they're very commendable for what they've done in such a short period of time to get caught up on all this stuff. And so you've done a great job, Dirk and Judge and everybody else.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to comment on is we're on a very short timeline here, and that's why it's gonna be done so quick to get it to the federal guys. So,
Yes.
but I think everybody's working hard to try to get everything done in that short period of time. Anybody else have comments?
Go ahead.
Just want to make sure that they have all the resources they need from us to get this stuff done.
We got that. Any other comments or questions?
Dr. Yelderman's on the call. Do you have anything to add, Joe, about your relationship with NRS? Because they're actually reviewing all of your scientific work. And they almost get giddy when they look at it just to see the depth and breadth of what you've done.
I'm glad that they feel that way. I kind of feel nervous, that I haven't done it right or done it well enough. I always worry about that. But no, I think I'm very pleased that, that we've been working on this for a while and that we've generated some things that may be helpful to good decisions. And so we're here to help. And if you need anything from me, Dirk, just let me know.
All right. Thank you. That's it, Leland.
If nothing else, we'll go to item number 3, review items of interest concerning the FY 2021 budget development process.
Let's see here. Hang on a second, it's froze up. Happens sometime. That's why I'm keeping my camera off, because it can actually steal bandwidth. Well,
God, which one is David up there?
okay, should work now. There it goes. So last month I presented you with this, just kind of the budget process last month to now we're at this first juncture, and there's just not a lot to look at but as you look through what we've sent to you so far, and we'll have a lot of information for you on the upcoming July 8th meeting. I've met with a lot of our contractors, and I think this is the year we had talked about bringing and tying a lot of our research together, not just what's going on with NRS and the endangered species, but also our management tools that we've been working toward. And obviously we haven't met with the stakeholder group that Scott's going to lead a discussion with, but there's actually some things happening that will benefit us. But I do want to point out one thing. When you look at your draft budget, this is just the ordinary income section at the top of the draft that's in your packet. I want to point out last year we collected 734.49. We haven't really collected all that. That's what was projected. Year to date, we've got 96. This is actually our tax money. We've got just under 700,000, and there's usually anywhere from 20 to 30,000 deficit per year. But yet this number is a little higher. But if you'll see, our current tax rate is 0.00357, and this projected budget takes it down to no new revenue levels at 0.00329, but also compensates for a little bit over $20,000 in new value. And I'll show you, and that was in part of your other stuff, and I'll show you that in a second. Bottom line is, though, there was some comments made by some city officials that told me, if you'll see, groundwater districts, our maximum that we can charge over and above, in which now would be no new revenue level, that would institute an automatic voter approval rate would be 8%. Well, if we left our tax rate there, we're going to exceed that. And the bottom line is you've never done that in the first place. And so these are, the governor there's a lot of people talking about the governor has the ability to revert all entities to the 8% level that we're at before you trigger a vote. But the only thing in the law that said he could is a natural disaster. That meaning like hurricanes or tornadoes or tsunamis, or a city burns down, or a county burns from fires like up in the Panhandle. But the truth is, there has not been a legal determination on whether he can invoke that disaster declaration for a statewide based on the COVID-19. Yes, small cities and counties depend not just on taxes, but also on sales tax. But we're not in that situation. So what I wanted to show you is where I came up with the figures that I'm using as our first swath at this. Our tax base is 22,963,908,696 billion. So it's a little less than $23 billion in taxable value in the preliminary. There's a lot of people protesting right now, and my biggest angst, and I'm almost angry about it, because people are calling and asking me the one question: why are you raising my taxes so much? And I said, there's not one single taxing entity in this county that has landed on their new tax rate. But yet the letter implies that. I looked at my letter again today after 2 more calls on my cell phone. People are really up in arms, and I think it's because that's a disingenuous letter, and maybe each of you should speak to our state representatives to get the meat and potatoes of that letter, because it says to people, your property is going up this much, and it appears your taxes will be this much in the coming year. Well, that's preliminary, and there's no way 3 of those school district numbers even could be possible at my house with my taxes going up, because they're limited to the 2.5% of no new revenue. So that letter gives false, erroneous information. So that's my soapbox for today. I do believe in that we have been very good, and because of the leadership and the guiding principles of the five of you. And so last year, we collected 734,000. Remember that number a minute ago at the 0.00357. So that means if we left that tax rate, we would jump to almost 120,000 a year, which we won't. And it's based on this number right here. But also I looked at that number and I backdoored it to get to what our number 734,499 was, plus 20,000. I'll show you where I got the additional $20,000 income, and that would give us a revenue of 754. So $754,499 if we reduce our tax rate all the way back to what would be no new revenue rate in the eyes of the law. And you can still go lower than that. I'm just using that as a benchmark right now. So our new value in the district is what we need to look at. That's the projected revenue if we leave our tax rate the same. But what I'm proposing is approximate because we don't have our certified values yet. So this is all mute if those values change substantially. But right now, again, I'm going to show you with the next portion that the new value that's in the preliminary tax forms that I've provided each of you, it shows total new value market of 723 million, whatever. But the new value taxable, and that's the number that's new value. I don't know if it's broken down by new buildings or new businesses. It's a really hard one to break down any further. But if we look at that $608 million of new value taxable, and we calculate it at the 0.00329, that would provide you a little over $20,000. You may want to check me on the math, but that's where I would project that, and that lands to the decisions and the comments. I look back in the minutes last year in August and at the public hearing, Scott and Leland, you two went back and forth, not arguing, but actually speaking to the merits of what I just showed right there. And so to make life easier on you, I'm not going to be proposing anything higher than 0.00329 in our proposed budgets up through August. And then you can still set your preliminary tax rate at the first meeting in August, which you would by law. Whatever that number you set, you can go down by the end of August at your hearings, but you can never rise above your preliminary tax rate. And so I just wanted to get that out there so that you see that. It actually, if you calculate that, I forgot to tell that if I calculated that, it would be $20,013. And sticking to the Leland system of let's round things up. And I don't like the number 13 anyway. So round things up or round things down, Leland. That's a good accounting method. It makes it simple. So with that said, we'll have you'll see in that proposed budget that's in your packet, the additional revenue will be in the, Shelley, tell me what that number is in the packet. Do you have it?
Which number is it you're looking for?
The contingency. So in your, is it 140? Okay. So the contingency now has 140,000 in it, gentlemen, and what you had put there last year, that was pretty much zero. And we actually set a budget that last year that was not balanced. It was budgeted for an additional 27,000 to meet our scientific endeavors. So we reached into our reserves to balance the budget last year. And I anticipate that we won't use those funds, but because of some of the things that have occurred with COVID that we weren't able to attain this year. But bottom line is, we'll come to you with several proposals from Alan Standen, USGS, WSP, LRE, and then I'll also factor in where I think some additional costs may be for monitor wells and replacing monitor well equipment. Corey did an analysis for me. All told, we're up to 116 monitor wells. To have that many evenly dispersed across majority of the major aquifers is recognizable. But I'm not sure we can ask the state to add more to their continuous grid, because they obviously are under some pretty big budget reductions right now just to get them through this biennium. Any questions?
I don't have any. Basically, what I've always told Dirk is if we go up 20,000, which is really the new construction, new houses, new buildings, new everything, not how it increased our value, but it's on new construction, which, they ought to be taxed, and that new construction would add to 20,000, which is a little, around 2% increase, a little over 2% increase of our, for inflation here in the office. So salaries, other costs. So hopefully we're trying to keep everybody about the same as last year.
Does this, Dirk,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
the line item in your budget draft, the 140,000 contingency fund number, is that, and again, remember, I'm just an engineer. I don't understand the financial statements all the time. Is that $140,000, is that going into the contingency fund as surplus, or is it being brought out to meet our budget requirements in this draft?
It's a great question, Scott. Actually, it's actually a placeholder for monies yet to be allocated to things like project by Dr. Yelderman or a 3D model. And so if they come to us with proposals and we agree to put those in, let's say Dr. Yelderman's got a $25,000 project. So we put it and we identify it into the Edwards or the Trinity, whatever the project might be, then we remove that. It removes that amount of money from the contingency fund. So this basically lets me know what kind of the amount of money we can move amongst our cohorts for. And Keister's working really hard on getting us some ideas as well. He's done a lot of work, and he and I talked for almost an hour again this morning about how do we now connect things? How do we tie the bow around it as we're looking at? We have to change our management plan between now and the first of the year. We've got some management area opportunities. We got your committee we'll be working with. How do we put a bow around all of this discernment and understanding we've had? And that might be a technical memorandum that kind of puts the Rubik's Cube in a way that we can understand it.
Okay.
What it is, Scott, is on page 3. Go to page 3 right there, and you see the TBD, to be decided.
It'll be
It'll be
distributed
moved
among
from there over to there.
So last year we pulled 27,000 out of our rainy day fund or whatever we want to call it to meet our budget requirements, right? Are you proposing any either pulling from or putting back into that fund this year right now, Dirk, or is it too early to tell?
Honestly, Scott, if we have, let's say we get all these proposals from all the different scientific teams, these gold standard people. And again, Dr. Joe, I'm glad he's listening, because he's got a 2-year project that's funded through the coalition, but yet he has other ideas all the time for us to participate with him related to management. So let's say we get them all in and they actually all add up to 200,000, and we go through there and we pick the ones we think are relevant. We have a sense of urgency, or what's the value to what we already know. And then I usually come and prioritize those. And last year I prioritized them all. They used up all the contingency fund, and then it necessitated an additional $27,114 to actually balance, to bring that into a balance. That's how many endeavors we had.
So right now it's too early to know.
Yes, sir, it is. Yeah.
That.
And the other is, I do want to point out one thing, and Shelley's listening, Corey's listening, and Corey's manning the front door in case somebody wants to address the board in comments or something in person. But we know as a staff, we're in unique times. We are not expecting salary enhancements. We're not expecting. We realize what the world is up against, and we realize we're very blessed, the 4 of us, to have jobs, We've been blessed by our board to equip us with the necessary tools that we could work from our homes. And we have a sense, or I notified them that I have a sense that we need to respect how difficult it is for some people. Every day I meet somebody new who's lost their jobs, people that I wasn't even aware had lost their jobs. And so as things are evolving back, this may not be the time for us to be expecting cost of living raises or job performance. Yes, we've all put in a lot of other hours, and everybody's been on board and is helping me pull together the science over the last 8 or 9 years and packaging it to the right people. But we know what these state agencies are up against. We know what's happening. So I hope that gives you peace of mind to know what we're thinking or what I'm thinking of as the manager and you being the governance.
Yeah, Dirk, that's a great lead into the next comment I was going to make, which is in the environment that we're in right now, I would suggest that we consider at most a flat revenue from last year and maybe even a small actual cut because people are losing their jobs. I think that would be a good statement to make that, we're in tough times, and yes, we want to do good science, and I'm a scientist myself as an engineer, but I think it's important to recognize that our money comes from the taxpayers, and they're hit hard right now.
The taxing authorities believe that.
Yeah, I would like to, although we financially and economically, we're not going to affect individuals very much because our tax rate is so low. To me, it's a token gesture that how government should be, that we take into consideration the people that are supporting us financially.
Well, I'll support you on just saying that, because I've said that to school board members, and I'm in Salado, and they are talking about a 20-cent reduction, but it's still an increase. And I think it's very inappropriate at this juncture to be asking for more money than what you gain from people, especially as painful it is in 2 of the school districts, if not 3 across the county, that were below the market value, that 75% number, and the Presel district under the guidance of the comptroller, not the county government, which they changed their name. They could change their name to the Chisholm Trail Appraisal District, and it would be more reflective that they're a part of the comptroller's office. But they're doing what they're tasked to do. They're not doing anything erroneously. But that letter that they're required to send out is going to need there's going to need to be some legislative action to assist the comptroller in redefining the truth in taxation guidelines that all taxing entities are encumbered by. And going back to what you said, Scott, I too feel this way. I have a friend across the street who's suffering, and he bought a house several years ago for $400,000. Now it's being appraised at over $6 million, and he doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
And he's in the corporate world, and at least get these tax rates back to level funding.
Yeah,
But,
I just throw it out there for consideration.
Yeah.
That's right.
The big thing is we run a pretty lean budget, and then we decide on the science. So how much are we going to spend on science? That's the key, is when Dirk comes up with the science and what the priority is on, because that's what we're going to cut. So do we need the science because of the salamander or for whatever purposes? I mean, that's the bottom line, is, are we going to cut science this year? So we run on everything.
And may I add one more thing that may be on the horizon, and I say this with empathy, and I say this with understanding of what they're up against. The county and the village, as the judge said in those meetings, Leland, if we don't all maintain some sort of seat at the table, whatever that value we pay our way to the table is, the village is really suffering on sales tax. They've always struggled, and I've always wanted them to give more to the coalition, and this time they've added another 10,000. The Salado Water Supply has to this first step. So it gave all of us together, that was 40,000. but the next two steps are not going to be cheap. But I personally think, Scott, that this may be the time to do exactly what you were saying and feel comfortable to exceed that 140, or if you move the tax rate back to the level funding, whatever that would be, that'd be somewhere like 327 might be the number if that's what you all land on, but that we be prepared to pay quite a bit toward the development of a 4D rule and quite a bit more toward building protections so that an onerous HCP isn't kind of laid on top of us. And that we then began working toward petitioning for, and this is not said a lot of time, but we are a distinct population segment, meaning the aquifer does not move from Williamson County into Bell County. And so there's not movement of those two Salado Salamander units, but that may take 4 to 5 years to get to that point. But that would afford us complete protections and maybe even delisting. And it's because the Parks and Wildlife have been so engaged in working with Solana Ranch, why we've had these reimbursable orders with task orders with US Fish. Those are two scientific communities that impact final decisions, and they don't take their job lightly. They're serious folks, and we've been blessed by that. So it's not a time to beat our chest. It's time to maintain these relationships and let the science help us get past the path. In other words, we're in the red zone. Let's push this thing across over the next couple of years, and it may take more. Honestly, it may take more of a bite of the apple from us than anybody.
Oh, this, Gary, I agree with you, Dirk and Leland, both on the fact is that we're in this coalition about the salamander, and if one steps out, it could collapse. So we may have to start focusing as much as we possibly can financially and et cetera to maintain that coalition to go forward. If we don't, I mean, say the village backs out, it pretty much ends the coalition. And then how does the county and we and everybody else pick up the slack? I mean, it's an all in conference deal. Everybody's got to stay in there to make it work. So there's going to be a lot of focus in that area right now. So, you know, I know Dirk and everybody's staying on it. So yeah, we're going to have to look at that in a bigger way than we've ever looked at it before in the past, at least since I've been on the board. So that's my comment.
Leland, David may have some comments. I haven't heard David's voice.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we didn't know which one you were, David, so that's why we were asking.
I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
If nothing else, we'll go ahead and go to number 4, review and discuss items of interest concerning the November 3rd, 2020 general election.
Okay, let me get back to the. So, the fact that we have 2 of you up for election, or what, if you so choose, you'll be. There's a very specific time for us to do certain things, and so at the top it says that the notice of a candidate filing deadline for the November 3rd, 2020 election is required by June 18th, 2020. I'll show you in a minute. I've already met that deadline, and that's been posted, and it's on our website. That's in accordance with the Texas election code. Does that mean you can come in and apply for a position if you want to be a candidate on the day I posted that? And the answer is no. That form prescribed by the Secretary of State has to be posted on the district courthouse at Clearwater and on our website. And under House Bill 305 in the last session, we have to have the election process in perpetuity on there, which we've got it in place. The bottom line is this announcement says the things that are in red. In that announcement, it says the first day to file for a place on the general election ballot for local political subdivisions, which always remember we're one of those, is Saturday, July 18th. Because that that day falls on a Saturday, then we're obligated under the law to move it to a Friday. So we can start taking applications for precinct 1 and precinct 3 on that day. The last day to order a general election is August 17th. And if I'm not mistaken, Shelley, it looks like the board will drop a gavel on that, the election order. I'll bring it before you on August the 12th. But August the 17th is still the last day for anybody to come in that 30-day window to apply for a place on the ballot for the general election. We are not holding a special election. Somebody said to me the other day, they said, well, you have a board member who was appointed. Is his position not a special election? And my answer to that was no. He took the position after the 2-year mark had passed, and so it wasn't. It's either within. You hold a special election at the next available election, and the two are in sync. If he had been elected to that position, he would still be. The election would still be held on the same day. There's also that date where people might change their mind and they want to come in and get their name as a write-in. That deadline is very specific, the 74th day before the election, and that date is August 21st. So today you're going to drop a gavel that makes me your election officer, and then I work directly with the county elections office, and all those things go forth. What I wanted you to know is that I'll then sign a contract that you'll approve the contract between y'all and Melody to run the election in November 2020. Remember, we will be billed after the election, and the election then will be a part of the FY21 budget. And so the placeholder for that amount of money is projected at $5,000, and that's in your draft budget today. But that won't be in this year's budget. It'll be in FY21 because October 1 is a new budget year, and we won't be charged. A couple of times, if we have candidates and they're contested races, it can cost us as much as in the past. I think one time we paid over $4,000, but that's a good mark for us not knowing, because they're polling locations, and then they have the new rule where you can vote anywhere at any of the assigned polls. So the election order you will do, and I'll have it in front of you in August 12th. And as I said, Precinct 1, Leland, you're up for re-election if you so choose, for a 4-year term. And the same for you, Jody Williams, for County Precinct 3. This will probably be the last election that you'll have with the current line for county precincts. Before the next election after that, they'll have redefined those lines and made those adjustments based on the census. Shelley is a notary, so any of you that come in, you'll have to sign and do an oath of the accuracy and the nepotism clauses. We have those packets. We walk you through it, and we will make sure everything is exactly right and that you have all the facts. That notice I told you that I had until June 18th to post. Shelley and I prepared it, and it was posted on the 5th, and it's on our website. If you go click on the news feed, and then it'll take you to this document multiple different ways. And in perpetuity, we will always have election information on there. So after this election, the data on the website, the facts in the website will then talk about the next election 2 years from then, which would be 3 of you your positions will be up in the general election ballot. And we're obligated to do that so people can always find out what your election methods are about. We've always had it there. We're just being a little more formal this way. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and close the workshop at 2:35. Does anybody need a break?
I do. Quick one.
We're going to have a real quick break right here before we start the meeting.
meeting with, going on right now with the property management people and, the writers.
Gary.
And I didn't know, okay.
I guess I could mute it, but no reason to. Well, I think we deal with protest every year.
Got quite a few people online, just trying to, you probably ought to ask people to individually, and you can call out ask them to introduce themselves when you call it to order, because we have to have some way of knowing who's on the call. As if they were here, they would have to sign a sheet. So you could use the numbers. I think, of course, we know David is caller number 4, but everybody else, you can just call those out. Can you see them from over there?
Go ahead. I can see something over there on the left-hand side.
Scott can
Well-
drop it down and show.
Scott can drop
God will
it.
bring the other side.
Scott, pull this across here.
Yeah.
And then when he'll let people introduce themselves when he calls meeting to order. That way we can get them on their name on the record.
Okay.
Leave.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the June 10th, 2020 meeting of the Clearwater Underground Water Conservation Board, the board meeting to order. It is now 2:37, and if everyone will please stand, we'll go ahead and do an invocation and pledge of allegiance. And David, we'll have David do the invocation, and Gary will do the pledge of allegiance. David?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
This is David. Heavenly Father, we're just so thankful for the technology that we have and so grateful for our general manager and his staff. It just makes it possible for all things with you, Lord. And these things we ask that we also remember those that are in uniform, that we can call if we need help. And we just thank you for that. And these things we ask you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
States of America.
and to the republic for
Republic for which it stands,
under
one
God,
nation, under
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming. For the record, we have in this room here on our virtual meeting, we have Gary Young, Jody Williams, Scott Brooks, myself, Leland Gerspach, and David Cole is virtual. If I would, I'd like to have everybody that's listening in for the record, since we have to have that for our public record. Everybody would like to identify themselves. We have Dirk Aaron, our general manager, I know. We have Shelley Chapman, and we also have, who else?
WA.
Okay, WA.
William,
Shelley, go ahead and mute yours, please.
Okay, SB.
Sandra?
Sandra, is that you? Sandra Blankenship?
Yep, that's there. I see it on the.
Call it 4.
Coming forward is David.
David.
Shelley Chapman. Dr. Joe Yelderman, you're listening in?
Yes, sir.
And Mike Keister, you're listening in?
Yes, I am.
Do we have any others?
Did we get Will Anderson? He's the proposed intern today. He's going to listen through and then be available to speak on that agenda item.
Will, are you listening in?
Yes, I'm on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's the people that are attended the board meeting today. So do we have any public comments? Do we have any public comments from anyone? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and go to item number 3, approve the minutes of the May 3rd, 2020 board meeting.
Gary Young makes a motion to approve the minutes as presented to the board.
Jody Williams seconds.
David Cole second.
Okay, we got Jody seconded the thing, and do we have any discussion changes? If not, we'll go ahead and vote. David, how do you vote?
Yes.
David votes to approve. Board members here, do we all vote aye on this? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let the record show that all board members present in the room here voted aye. So minutes passed unanimously. Number 4, discuss, consider, and take action to accept the monthly financial report for May 2020 as presented. Do I hear a motion?
I motion that we accept it as presented.
Gary Young seconds.
Motion made by Scott, seconded by Gary Young. Any discussions or questions? Okay. Hearing none, since we're all ready to vote, David, how do you vote?
David voted yes.
Okay, David voted yes. Board members, all of y'all present, how do y'all vote?
Aye.
All board members present voted aye. Carry unanimously 5-0. Discuss, consider, and take action to accept the monthly investment fund account and the TexPool 449 and TexPool 590 accounts as presented.
If I might
David
point out,
Cole, make the motion.
Okay, David makes a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Scott Brooks. Dirk, you had some discussion?
I just wanted to point out that this is our reserve funds right now over and above our balance. But I anticipate that it's still going to be close to $1 million in there at close of business the last day of September. And so it lends to your ability to do what you had talked about in your budget coming up. In other words, your budget discussion this month.
Agreed.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. Do I hear any discussion? Okay, since your day will vote, David already voted yes. Board members, how do y'all vote?
Aye.
Board members present voted aye, passed unanimously 5-0. Item number 6, let me go ahead and discuss, consider, and take action by resolution to accept the technical memorandum report by Mike Keister, PG, LRE, water titled Evaluation of Groundwater Pumping in Travis and Williamson County. Let me throw that out. I don't think we're quite ready yet for that resolution. It's not quite, where we want it to be. I'd like to have a motion by the board that we table that till.
I'll make a motion that we table item 6.
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion on the floor by Gary Young, the table, seconded by Jody Williams. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on tabling the motion. David, how do you vote?
I agree, tabled it.
Okay, David votes yes to table. Board members, how do y'all vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All we board members voted, all present voted aye. Motion carries 5-0. Dirk, we'll bring that up at a future time.
Okay.
Discuss, consider, and take action to allow the general manager to pursue a reimbursable task order with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Southwest Region officials and CUWCD for Service Manual Part 264 and Chapter 2 to continue the joint research and policy understandings by the research and regulatory biologists necessary for budgeting and planning related to fiscal year 2021. Dirk, you want to cover that?
Yes, that's that is a piece of the puzzle as we continue to do research with the research, both the research biologists with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as possibly the regulatory biologist. If the regulatory biologist is working directly with us, just like Pete has, we can go into a reimbursable order and that person works with us a longer time and we can help offset some of the costs associated with that. They don't have a lot of money, but yet there is an opportunity for us to participate, and it's a goodwill gesture as much as it is an acknowledgement that not only they're research biologists, we know that 17 or 18,000 we pay Pete every year doesn't pay his full salary, but it does pay a portion of it for the time and effort that he's working on our behalf. And the same would be with the regulatory biologist. They're two separate divisions. it's time to renew the original one we have, which was between Clearwater and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and it was with us because we were the repository of the data of the work not only of Pete but that of Dr. Yelderman and USGS and all the other components. That there's a segue that their staff has access to that. This is a common practice. I put a lot of information in there for you. There's not an agreement in place, but I would like to have the privilege on your behalf to pursue that and work the elements of the agreement for the next, both with Pete and with our regulatory biologist. It's a strategy that we need to take advantage of, and we know what kind of research he's done, and the analysis of the best available science is a big part of what the regulatory biologist does in concert with the research biologist. So it's a very practical approach and one that just makes things a lot more affordable. And it's a gold standard approach in situations like we have. And we've been afforded that for the last 5 years. And you can see on the screen in front of you, you can see that we got that January 14th of 2015. That's just a screenshot of the top. But also on that, down in the bottom area, you'll see where it speaks to the Bell County Adaptive Management Coalition. And again, as we're working through the budget, we'd like to get this thing in place, and the meats of it, should we want to be afforded. The cost of it is something that gets negotiated later. The agreement is just the agreement in itself.
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
Dirk, what exactly are we, as a board, voting on for you to do? Just continue or negotiate a continuation of an agreement that's in place?
If you'll notice up on the screen, this agreement was they're only 5 years in time, and
Okay.
so we want to renew this agreement for 2020 through 2025. And any given year, if we don't have the money, we don't have the money.
Okay.
It's more about the substance of the agreement and the practical nature of it. What's the so what, who does what, and it's really like an interlocal agreement in our minds, or a memorandum of understanding, but it really is a significant tool for us to engage with U.S. Fish.
So
And
what you're going to be negotiating doesn't obligate any funds yet?
Not at all. Not
Okay.
at all. It just gets the framework so that when we do, because I will tell you, we may need to put these under our budget if the coalition just doesn't have the financial capacity. And so this original one was an agreement between Clearwater and U.S. Fish, but we also requested it on behalf of the coalition at the time. We added that in the subject line so that they would understand that the coalition collectively was paying the bill, and Shelley would get all that, and then she turned it into the county auditor. I'm hoping that framework stays in place, that we can continue this, but if it doesn't, have the agreement in place, we take on some of the work in a more defined way.
So in a nutshell, the coalition's, what we've had in the past is part of the coalition's been paying that right there, correct?
That's right. We've been
Okay.
paying 17 to 18,000 a year for Pete.
Correct.
Pete, yes.
And number two is anything that you do, Dirk, will go into next year's budget, correct?
Absolutely. This will let me begin to put the framework, and then if it's a reimbursable agreement with us, funded by us, then it would go in our budget. If it's agreed upon by the coalition for the next fiscal year, then we'll have the nomenclature where the agreements with us, because the research actual permit down at the Springs for Dr. Yelderman and what he does is actually in our name as well. Because we're the repository of the data, and we have boots on the ground on a daily basis. The county doesn't have dedicated employee, neither does the village or Salado Water Supply. So that's why on behalf of the coalition, we were doing some of the heavier lifting to keep things rolling.
Okay. Do I hear a motion that we go ahead and allow Dirk to go ahead and keep negotiating this or discuss this?
I'll make the motion. This is Gary Young. I'll make the motion to go forward with this renewal of a reimbursement agreement with U.S. Fish Wildlife Services.
And this is David. I'll second that.
Okay, David seconded. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to allow Dirk to go ahead and negotiate this. We'll vote on it at a future date, but it's just allowing him time to do negotiation. Do you hear any discussion?
You'll vote on monetary part later.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
It's just allowing him to go ahead and
Start negotiation.
start negotiating this.
Gotcha.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. David, how do you vote?
Yes.
David votes yes.
Made the
Board members, how do y'all vote?
Aye.
Aye.
All board members voted aye. Let the record show that the motion passed 5-0. So Dirk, you can go ahead and start the negotiation with them. Okay, number 8, discuss, consider, and take action to approve the FY20 line budget item amendments as requested. Shelley?
The first line item is for a bill that we have from Lloyd Goslink, and we're just a little bit shy in that particular line item. Dirk, do you want to explain more about that?
Yeah, I can. That this is monies that we've used for the, of course, we're in the meat and the substance of the GMA process, and we have a line item for attorneys that is groundwater management area based legal advice, DFC legal advice, and modeled available groundwater advice. So we track it that way, and we have exceeded what we perceived that to be this year. And so, and it's in your packet. I mean, it's actually in your financials this time. And you'll notice we haven't been using any legal advice under the other subcategory for drought contingency. Should we have legal action or a desire to change our drought contingency plan, we have that there. So that's where we're suggesting you pull the money. The next one is we saw an opportunity. We have a line item with GMA 8. We call it the GMA 8, and the sub item is technical, and the other one is administratively. The technical this year, we've been getting support from both WSP and from Mike in that category. But then we had this additional opportunity to redefine those things I showed you last meeting, and then what in that presentation where we could move our production more accurately to different layers vertically, and then we can actually start thinking toward other things. So Mike did the heavy lifting on that and helped us and analyze that. And honestly, it was a three-way discussion. Ty was involved as well, and that's why we see some legal costs associated with that. So we had that GAM calibration where we moved 7,300 from it a while back because TWDB had set that GAM recalibration for the Edwards Aquifer, pushed it down another year, maybe 2. So we can move that amount over, and I think we're going to probably end up using it because there will be some technical review when you're dealing with the opinions of 10 other districts, including our own at the GMA process. So to having that technical advice, what's the so what of that run? What does that number mean? What can we do to better understand these pumping, especially in these unmanaged areas?
I have a question.
Yeah, Scott has a question.
So Dirk, I'm gonna start backwards. The GAM calibration, you're zeroing that out. Does that mean we have no expectations of having to spend money on that this
Yes, sir.
Year? Okay. And then for drought contingency, the question that pops up in my mind is it's June. The drought is just about to start if we're going to have one. Is it wise to take money out of the drought contingency fund when we're going into the time when we may have a drought and have expenses related to that? And it's just I don't have enough experience knowing what we're using that money for, but when I see drought and budget being reduced right as we get into the time frame when we would have a drought, it begs the question.
Well, and it's a great question. And the truth is that line item for legal advice was actually a placeholder there to when we start looking at doing management plans and making significant changes to our management plan, as well as to our rules for management areas and management zones. That might behoove us. We'll have technical advice from our consultants, but we have kicked the can down the road to work on a lot of that because we can't have those public meetings yet, and our own consultants haven't finished everything. So that 53701 is actually a subcategory under legal where I track attorney fees. That's only if we were going to make changes to it, and then we get reviews of our drought contingency plan from our legal team. Will that hold up from a legal standpoint? We've already got an existing drought contingency plan in place that I actually apply when we hit the triggers. And so it shouldn't, if we got dry this summer, it shouldn't necessitate a legal opinion because we vetted that and have lived under the current plan. If I'm doing my job and doing it right, there shouldn't be a legal question to it. And I'm just being really, really honest. That okay. I anticipated having that setting there if we had started our stakeholder meetings and the stakeholders wanted to look at the drought plan as a part of our management zones and management area and adjusting the rules. I didn't want to leave ourselves high and dry if we needed legal advice on that. That was a purpose in the previous budget.
And we still have 4,400 left in.
Yeah, it's just moving that much.
No, I know.
We still have 4,400 left in if we do so. But Dirk, I want to question something here. We're taking 3,600 away from the GAM calibration down to 0. Are you saying that we should move that 3,620 over to 5,605?
Yes, because I anticipate a lot of engagement between now and the August 7th meeting, and then the next steps of analyzing it and maybe doing our own evaluation of what some other districts might want to go in a different direction and what would that mean to us from a scientific standpoint. I know we're not going to do that. Was that Edwards calibration it had a 18,300. It was 2 tasks from LRE. We used 7,300 of it already for one thing, and then we used some for another. And this particular move is to just utilize the rest of that money because we were notified by Texas Water Development Board they were not going to go. And Mike, you might answer that question on. There was two different ways that we were going to be reviewing the new GAM once they gave it to us. One's a numerical, and the other one was I don't know, Keister, can you hear me?
Yeah, the other one is a conceptual model. So the difference between the two is the conceptual model is done prior to the numerical model, and it is really just a description and the quantitative values of how the understanding of how the aquifer works. The numerical model is taking all of the data from the conceptual model and putting it into a mod flow format.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
So what of that was when they come up with that new GAM model and they start running numbers in it, we wanted to know, they're going to want us to have a lot of input. And the sad thing is that model is only going to be used from right at the Bell County Expo down to the Colorado River, which is Williamson and Travis County. So we would be the only GCD essentially engaged in the accuracy and calibration of that model, and we're going to have to live with it. Anytime they make a big change and read and update a model, you really want to have a seat at the table. And I can do a lot of things, but I'm not a modeler.
So what I see here on this is the TBD means we don't have the invoice yet, but we know it's going to be coming. So if we take the 2533.70, add in the 3620 from GAM calibration to it, we come up with the 6153.70 is what happens.
Yes, and we're hoping that'll satisfy our needs in the month of July and August and September.
Okay, I understand.
These are great questions, honestly.
Do we have, any other questions of Dirk? Okay, board members?
Did I see David ask a question?
I have no questions.
All right, thanks, Dave.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the budget amendment request as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion made by Scott, seconded by Gary. Do I hear any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. David, how do you vote? David, can you hear me? How are you voting?
Yes.
Okay, David votes yes. Board members, how do y'all vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Let the record show passed unanimously 5-0. Okay, let me get back to my agenda here. Number 9, discuss, consider, and take action to direct the general manager to take appropriate actions necessary to meet the statutory requirements relating to the upcoming general election for precincts 1 and 3. That's what we covered a while ago in the workshop. We just need to go ahead and vote on it now. Dirk, anything you want to do there?
No, sir. That's just formalizing that you're expecting me to represent the district. Because we're a political subdivision, 99% of it occurs here except for the ballots and working out the contracts and engaging with Secretary of State's office to make sure everything is right. The fact that you assign that to me as your assistant secretary, technically, of the board.
Okay. Do you hear a motion to that effect?
Also move.
Motion made by Jody,
I'll second.
seconded by Gary. Any discussions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. David, how do you vote?
Yes.
David votes yes. Board members present, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Let the record show carry 5-0 unanimous. Okay, number 10, discuss, consider, and take action to approve the USA CPS internship program and the director general manager to execute said agreement as needed. Dirk, you want to cover that?
Yes, we weren't just fortunate. I felt personally blessed by the opportunity to work with Dan Ekstrom. He started in December and didn't get to finish his internship as he was working his way to a new career. And he officially retired, I think, the last day of May. He wasn't able to fulfill those last 30 or 40 days after the stay-in-place order. But I met this young man. He's on the phone, and you have his resume, you have his the documents. It's the exact same program. Dan actually worked with him and to help make sure that I knew he had the same thing. So we had actually talked about this. But I was honest with Will that we may not have an internship this summer. We just didn't know until right now. But Will was very patient, and I've talked to Dr. Yelderman. I have an idea that I'm going to let Will tell you what he's doing, what his background is, what his education is, and what his personal goals are. And then you can see why I feel like us having a field tech intern working directly with Dr. Yelderman and his team might be the bee's knees in this case, especially for Will, but also for us as a district. Will, do you feel comfortable to basically lay out who you are and what you do and what rank you are and your personal goals?
Yeah, sure thing, Dirk. Let me go ahead and turn my camera on so people can put a face with a name here. So hi everybody, my name's Will Anderson. I've been in the Army for about 6 years now, currently stationed on Fort Hood. I'm an engineer officer with the 36th Engineer Brigade.
Uh-oh, it froze, Will.
Leaving the Army.
Will, you froze up. You might want to turn your camera back off. Now we know what you look like.
Okay, yeah, we'll just go audio here. So I'll be leaving the Army on December 1st of this year, and I'll be going back home to California and hoping to get into the water resources industry. So hoping to take advantage of the Career Skills Program, which is a program that the Army allows us to participate in as we're transitioning out into the civilian workforce. You obviously are familiar with it from Colonel Ekstrom's participation in the program. But anyway, some background about me. I did my undergrad in environmental science, and then commissioned into the Army as an engineer officer, and then was very fortunate after my first duty station in Alaska, went to the captain's career course, and my branch has a program with Missouri University of Science and Technology where we can work on a master's degree while we're doing our military professional education as well. So I took some classes in the evenings, and then finished up a master's in geological engineering just last year in August, and then came here to Fort Hood. And so currently working in the current operations cell in my unit, but like I said, transitioning off of active duty here in the next few months. So hoping to get some real world kind of hands-on experience before I get out there into the workforce.
And if I might, Will, Will, you're a captain at this time?
Yes, I am.
And I'm just going to be honest with you, board. I actually crossed paths with this young man and his wife. It might have been a year ago. I'm not sure exactly where, Will, when, but I know it was at the expo during an event out there where we had our education trailer.
I think it was September, October, one of those.
Yeah. So my thoughts were, we've really got a lot on our plate here at the office, and we wanted this to be a very positive experience. So I reached out to Dr. Yelderman. We're funding Claire's master's program. And so, Joe, can you lay out what our goals are to incorporate him into your project that we're funding?
Well, yeah, first of all, Will, nice to meet you, at least virtually. And I appreciate this opportunity. I'm excited because Will has a lot of education and skills that I think will work well with us, and he's very qualified to do some of the things that we're doing. And specifically, we can really benefit from someone who's local for sampling and for water quality sampling, or even our measurements that need to be made in response to our goals with Clara, which involve rainfall events. And so collecting data that's specific to those event related things, we would have to drive from Waco down to the site and collect and hopefully be there on time and so forth. Will's more local, so we hope to use him specifically in that way, but also it'd be a great opportunity, I think, for us to learn from Will and Will to learn from us in what we're doing. So I'm thrilled about it, and I don't know that I could give you all the specific details at this point, but I'm sure we'll have a meeting, a strategy meeting, and lay out the different responsibilities, and it will be very beneficial to both parties.
And for the record, Will deploy here. He'll have the laptop similar to Colonel Ekstrom. He'll have an intern email. He'll communicate and work with Corey, trying to get to the field, pulling the data, setting up rain gauges in some key places, plus either removing the current portable weather stations we have to more appropriate locations, and or maintaining the data download currently from those stations onto that laptop. It's and getting that data in the hands of Claire, and we ought to have Claire present her. Have we had her present her goals to the board yet? That whole project, Dr. Joe?
No, we haven't had her before the board yet. She met y'all at the office, some of you at the office, the staff, and then you were able to listen in on her proposal defense, but she has not actually been able to present to the board yet.
Yeah,
so
Dirk.
Whenever you're ready, we're ready.
We were just talking about you mentioned Claire several times, and none of us recognized who you were talking about. So it's good to get who she is with the name.
You bet. Her name is actually Clara, C-L-A-R-A.
Okay.
Yeah, Clara Smith Salgado. It's a hyphenated last name. And I'll be frank with all of you, especially she may be. I don't think she's listening in on this meeting, but her father is Brian Smith, who is a hydrogeologist for Barton Springs Groundwater Conservation District. So she grew up around groundwater and groundwater conservation management, and very interested in that as a career, getting her master's here. So she's a perfect fit. And so I'm ready. Well, we were all ready to share with the COVID-19 and all the priorities with the critical habitat and things are kind of made it difficult for us to align her presentation, but just let us know when the next meeting is and we'll try to schedule her.
And gentlemen, for the record, her father and his coworker, Brian and Brian, were scheduled in April at our board meeting to present their Trinity Aquifer study that's really telling of putting together all the scientific understanding and put it into a very, very deep, complex package. All the Trinity Aquifer south of the Colorado River that takes in the new district, as well as the Plum Creek and as well as Barton Springs. And they work at Barton Springs. I call it the Brian and Brian show. And maybe we can get them to do that presentation virtually at July as well. It takes about 30 or 40 minutes to hear that. Now, Clara ought to present what she presented to her committee, just to show what the approved path forward is at our next board meeting on the 8th.
That's July 8th.
Yes, sir. No,
Okay.
July 10th. It is July 8th. July 8th.
Okay. Yeah, let me look at that and make sure we can. I'll try to get that on our schedule.
Okay. So,
go ahead, Dirk.
So you can see that that this is a really dynamic opportunity for the district to add somebody that's got credentials and understands the importance of data, and he's got the same skills and that trustful nature and character that we found in Colonel Dan. And so I will just tell you, it's really going to add and support the efforts of Dr. Yelderman, because sometimes Dr. Yelderman has to pick up the pieces, and he doesn't charge us anything, and neither will Will. But I think helping Will get a feel for a GCD as he moves on back to California, because they are redefining how they regulate, manage, and procure both surface and groundwater. And so there's a huge opportunity for Will in his home state.
Okay, I think you just clarified, for our purposes, there'll be no cost out of our pocket except maybe some reimbursable expenses that he may have. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And
that means mileage or something like that.
Right. I have two comments. One is, Will, I'm sorry to see you want to go back to California. Would much rather you stay in Texas. Being a CPA, we don't have income tax here like you will have out there.
That is true. Family's all there in California. Has been there for a while though, so that's where I'm headed.
Okay, so when you get it, you'll have to tell us how you got from California to Missouri to take your college there. But number two was
actually, I went there by way of Alaska, so.
Oh, that's a straight shot. Number two is just as a comment. My dad was in the combat engineers in World War II, so he was getting shot at and building at the same time. So I know you was in the same thing. So that's the only thing I have. Board members, do you have any questions or any comments? Okay.
What part of California?
Say again.
Repeat that, David.
He said what part of California?
What part of California, Will?
Oh, Sacramento area, specifically Woodland Davis, just to the west of Sacramento.
Okay. Very good. Anything else? Okay, we need to go ahead and have a motion. Do I hear a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion that we approve this internship agreement.
Okay,
David Cole seconded.
Go motion by Gary, seconded by David. Any discussions or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. David, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, board members present, how do y'all vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let the record show board members all voted aye here and carry 5-0. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Yes.
We're looking forward to have you, Will.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Mine froze up. I was just.
Oh,
Okay, number 11, we'll go ahead and go to number 11. General Manager's report concerning office management and staffing related to the district management plan.
So, as I told you last month, we've got a lot of things on our plate, and as things are soft opening, I would say that as long as the governor allows us to function this way, even if the five of you feel fully comfortable, I would say we would still need to operate the way we're doing today, being that we have a very limited space to add any more than 6 to that room at any given time. That's the maximum for that room. We are all back in. We are adhering to protections and social distancing as much as possible. We are wiping down our desks and cleaning behind ourselves for the sake of others, but we have a hard and fast rule from me, and but the umpire on that is Shelley. If any one of us are sick, or even we can tell they're sick, or they're just not to come to work, and we need to be firm with that because we just don't know the potential impact it would have on others within our own personal circle. And so we're adhering to that, but we're still fully functioning. We have not stopped doing anything. We are signing plats again and have been. We never quit signing plats for that matter. But the platting, the request to go review and view plats has increased again back to like it was. And I think Corey's handled 3 or 4 this week already. There's small subdivisions of 1 track into 2 tracks, but there is again additional phases. Scott can speak to that, and Scott's firm is different from the others. Many of the others don't even go out and ground proof it. They just start the process on the front end and include us. But there's others like Yago that goes out and ground proofs, knows where the wells are, and then has us look at the wells, and then or he knows and just simply gets them plugged and then makes sure it's in our database up to date. As property continues to change hands, I'm getting continued inquiries from potential buyers about the aquifer and the longevity or sustainability of water in that particular area, wherever it might be. We're holding fast to that. Corey's still inspecting wells, still testing water, and putting that into the database. So other than that, I don't see anything other than what's on the horizon is we do have a few permit inquiries. None of those have gotten to the formal stage of submitting an application with fees, but yet there is some inquiries. I really believe that once this endangered species situation gets resolved, you might see, and if there's public water expands out into the southwest part of the county to some areas, we may certainly see acceleration in development there. Other than that, I don't have anything else to offer.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's go ahead and go to number 12. All y'all have that stuff in front of you that was provided. There's no action required, but let me just comment that I was hearing the other day on drought status. If you look on the drought status report, you already have the Panhandle going into pretty severe drought. It was also noted that Colorado and New Mexico was already in severe drought up there. So, and they're saying they're expecting it to creep down this way and also come up from the southwest down there also. So we could have a very dry summer with some drought issues. So they said that thing's coming from the Panhandle and moving quite quickly.
Yeah.
We're actually, because Texas Water Development Board, some of our monitor wells that are part of our assessment were giving trouble, but Corey has worked with, and they're replacing equipment. They're not in a position other than the well group, which would be Chuck. Isn't that right, Corey? They're all still working from home, but he's allowed to deploy and go out. But you can't be there engaged with him. How's that working? That Corey's mic may not work on that.
Yes, that's the case.
case is that you can't or can go with him?
Well, I did meet him out there at Pea Ridge, but he can't get out. He can't get out very far from where he's at in Austin. So
Because of budget restraints and the fact he can't travel to remote areas. And if you'll notice, some of our monitor wells have those gray gaps in them, and that's what they're trying to. It's a pretty heavy load, but I do know that prior to this COVID deal, they were about to add 2 more people in support of his position, or at least 1, I know. So we're watching it close, Leland. The telling number is on the Trinity, we're already below our threshold of 33 inches. So we're at 92% of rainfall there. Even more so, we're at 80, just under 90% of rainfall in the Edwards. So you're exactly right. We're watching the gauge, and I'm looking at it in the mornings before I come to work, and looking at the prediction models. We don't want to. When we hit stage 1, we're going to be doing it. We're going to take a pretty hard awareness campaign, because what we see is this is the time of year people tend to use more water than any other time of year. And that's not a good thing.
Okay, your prediction models are basically saying the same thing, correct?
Yes. Yep. They're pointing toward it.
Okay. Any comments from the board?
Pray for rain.
Okay, number 13, director comments and report. David, you have any comments?
Oh, I think he's muted. David?
No, I do not have any.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. Stay safe. Jody?
It's good to be back.
It is good to be back. Gary?
Well, as I said before, since I've been able to attend a lot of these meetings, I really see a lot more of what our staff does and what Dirk's done and the county judge and all that. And most grateful and appreciated for all the long hours of diligence that you all are putting into put all this together. And thank you for the opportunity to be a part of that. And, just thank you all, Shelley, everybody, Tristan, Corey. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Scott?
No comments.
I have one comment, Dirk. I like to go ahead and have you in the future. It doesn't require board approval, but I like to go ahead and look at the possibility of going out for an RFQ for some legal services. Specified legal services, just to see what's out there. Maybe we'll want to, they're getting quite high. Just want to look and see what's out there, if you would.
And are you referencing to our general counsel legal services?
Okay. General counsel legal services.
Okay.
Just, go ahead and bring it if you can. I don't know if it'll be available by the next board meeting, but let's go ahead and try to get an RFQ on general counsel.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll bring the framework, what an RFQ will look like, and get your approval for me, and then I'll put in the what the process is that I'm obligated to do. You guys have not during my time. We've done RFQs for technical consulting and other things, but we haven't done an RFQ for general counsel during my tenure. But I know that there's probably other districts, and I can capture the guidelines from, and I'll work on that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're asking me to bring it to the board, and then the board will deliberate on, do they want to go forward with an RFQ process?
Correct.
Okay, and then that might be approved in July, and then maybe at August meeting.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the length of time it takes for me to put that out.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I don't have any other comments. I know the salamander is taking up a lot of time for you and myself and Gary, but it's always interesting as our county judge, who is always quite impressive. David is a great guy, very smart. He says he's getting creek deep into this stuff. Well, it's always kind of interesting. It's kind of, creek deep, but that's kind of what we're all into. We're over our head, I think, in some of this stuff. So anyway, that's what's going on here. Agenda item for the next meeting. Shelley, you got us something on the agenda item?
We have a possible amendment for the Evans permit. Is that right, Dirk?
Well, it'll be a minor amendment for the evidence permit, and the specificity of that I'll put in the packet. It won't require a public hearing because there's two ways to do minor amendments. Minor amendments are in our rules that the general manager can approve that for a specified change in the amount for a small production. But then the general manager can actually look at the merits of that and then choose to bring it before the board. And in this case, I think because there was some neighbors involved in this, and it'll change the dynamics of that original permit, but not in a negative way, in a positive way. But I think it needs to come to you all to see the merits of it, and my recommendation on why I would ask you to support the minor amendment. And it's defined in the rules that I can bring it before the board, and I'm going to be choosing to do that.
We also have a quarterly report coming again for the security benefit retirement plan for the second quarter.
We'll bring the other item back to that Keister, and we'll ask him to we'll ask him to present his proposed work and technical work for us in the next fiscal year, but also wrap a bow around the three things he's working on currently. So you've seen one report, and then there's one or two others that he's going to be bringing, and then he'll make his formal presentation with those, and then we'll drop a gavel on those in resolution so that then I can present that data directly to Texas Water Development Board and TCEQ.
Okay, thank you. I was going to go ahead and make a suggestion. To put that table item on the agenda for next time also.
Okay.
Any other items? Okay, next meeting, July 10th. When is it? July 8th, okay. Anything else?
Same place.
Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 3:27. Thank everybody for coming, being out there. Okay, go ahead and use it.
Bye, Sandra.